Previously in Uncommon, Book 1 in the Chronicles of the Common series, Kai woke from his 30-year coma with an obsession to find Kerr, the mercenary who tried to kill him. Now, first captain of the cast of Pollux, Luke must find a way to save his brother or lose him to the madness. And now, Chapter 6, LUHCEAN. I entered the war room to find Kai and Ileana seated in the front row whispering. Dee sat between the two, perched on Ileana's shoulder. After approaching the podium at the front of the room, I turned to address my crew for the first time. Congratulations, your plotting worked. We'll be launching the Pollux in 3 days. Ileana, I'd like you to join the crew as Chief Medical Officer and third in command. I assume there are no objections? The 2 mutineers sat dumbfounded, both of them numbly shaking their heads. Good. Now let's address your little coup. I moved to the side of the podium and leaned against the stand. There are certain realities that the 3 of us need to address, and it's important we come to an understanding before we take on new crew. I haven't been the primary in command in over 200 years, but don't mistake that absence for a lack of ability. I will not tolerate the 2 of you going behind my back again. Is that clear? We were trying to... Ileana began. I'm looking for a simple yes or no, Lee. I cut through her excuses. Yes, replied the pair. Kai crossed his arms over his chest and smirked in amusement. Ileana merely sat wide-eyed and hopeful. Good. I have no intention of running this ship to military code, but a chain of command is important. I paused to mentally prepare for the argument to come. Next, the 3 of us form the high command for the Pollux. The safety and well-being of the crew lands on our shoulders. If we're not honest with each other, then this ship will not survive. So, here's a bit of honesty to confront. None of us are ready to jump back into the fight. Kai and Ileana both burst from their chairs to argue, talking over each other in a cacophony of objection. Quiet, I shouted. Sit down now. The 2 returned to their seats in obvious hostility. If you can't face reality, then I'll cancel our mission immediately, I threatened. Ileana, your shields are hanging by a thread. You're tired, untrained in war, and you have little experience beyond the Matri camps. Kai, you've not regained your strength. You're far too dependent on blood, and you need time to adjust to the changes in your personality. I've been where you are, brother, and if you don't learn to control your emotions, you'll get us all killed, and I will not allow that to happen. I love you both, but now is not the time to be impetuous. By the end of my chastisement, both Ileana and Kai had hung their heads in acknowledgement of the truth. You're not alone. I softened my voice in an attempt to draw them back in. I've spent the last 3 decades living mostly in silence. I've not stepped foot outside of this asteroid in so many years that I'm not entirely certain I want to. We're damaged, and we need time to heal. Taking this ship into the fray with a wounded command is suicide. Can we at least agree on that? Kai and Ileana reluctantly nodded. So, what do you propose we do? What is our mission, my wise first captain? Kai's half-tease, half-bitterly spat query merely proved my point. I'll tell you what we're not going to do, I stated. We're not bringing a flood of refugee strangers on board to damage Ileana's repairing shields. We're in no condition to negotiate land rights or treaties with anyone. We're not prepared to dodge mercenaries and pirates hauling cargo across the common. We need to be honest and selective with our next steps. I don't care if we drift into the void. Just please tell me we're leaving this depressing asteroid. Ileana's expression had slowly turned from determination to hope and finally to impatience. As I suspected, she had been easily won over. A communications alert sounded through the war room. I turned to the wall behind the podium and activated the transmission. The image of our parents filled the center wall display. My mother's round face, long brown hair, and warm brown eyes sent an instant pang of homesickness coursing through my soul. Jotham's strong face, framed by closely cropped curls and streaked with gray at the temples, turned to lock on Kai. His brown eyes softened at the sight of his son. "Thank the gods! I've missed you so much, my sons." Unshed tears rose to my mother's eyes. "Ileana, it's always a pleasure to see you." "It's good to see you as well, Hallie, and you, Jotham," Ileana replied. "Hallie? Dad?" Kai stated, glaring at me for the deception. Jotham merely nodded to his son, recognizing his child's anger. He turned to address me. "Are we early?" "No. Perfect timing as always, Jotham. Now that we're all present, I'd like to discuss the next steps for the Pollux. Everyone is aware I've contacted Taj and Rake to join the crew as our new flight team. Kai had discovered my message to the pilot and navigations officer during his invasion of the ship's records. However, he had assumed that I meant to acquire the team in several months' time. I confirmed my plans with Rake this morning and we're scheduled to pick them up on the 3rd of next month. The Astrape is tied up on a mission near Shoshana Fe until that time. They're also unable to portal out any sooner due to the trouble they encountered on their last mission. The new flight crew had been caught attempting to retrieve a small group of Hada from Space Station Synergist 37. After exchanging illegal weapons fire with escort guards, they were now wanted for questioning throughout Quadrant 2. The two were forced into hiding on their family's ship, the Lona Astrape. The Astrape's primary responsibility was to provide support to the camps in Quadrant 2. Taj and Rake's presence severely impeded the ship's ability to perform their duties. Their transfer to the Pollux couldn't have come at a better time. "It's almost 2 weeks from now. I thought you said we're launching in 3 days," Kai asked. "We are. We're meeting the Astrape in the Kubari overworld on the 3rd. Along with our new flight crew, they will also be delivering a terraforming bunker and habitat supplies." The room paused in a moment of silence to absorb my implied proposal. "You want us to go planet hunting?" Kai finally responded, his voice rising in disbelief. "Planet hunting? Are you joking? We scoured every inch of the Common for any signs of a possible Hada homeworld for 50 years. Vahara was the best rock we could find. There's nothing out there." "Actually, we stopped at Vahara," I said. "We have yet to search the Prana side of the Quilera asteroid belt, beyond the Synergist system of Elios. We know what's out there, the Teshator Nebula, nothing else. And I'm not particularly fond of living so close to Prana," Kai interrupted. "And we've not searched beyond Varuna," I finished. "Again, the Sisters Nebula," Kai said. "Nothing else but the void. This is pointless." I continued, ignoring his dissent. "After we pick up our crew in the bunker, we'll begin our search beyond Varuna." I turned back to the wall display to address our parents. "Have you found an engineer?" Jotham nodded, his eyes sparkling in agreement with my plan. "Eglin." "The boy you've been mentoring?" I asked, uncomfortable with this recommendation. It was bad enough our medical officer, pilot, and navigations officers were all below the age of 100. To have an engineer of only 28 was the equivalent of tossing a babe to the Naraki, especially one of Varuni descent. The Varuni aged far slower than any other species. 28 to a Varuni was still virtually adolescence. "Eglin is the best engineer we have immediately available. I know you're not comfortable with such a young man holding that position, but I think you'll be pleased with his performance. He's been training with the combat teams for 2 years now. All we ask is that you give him a chance." Jotham's voice held an edge of nervous apprehension I sensed immediately. "What are you not telling me?" I asked. My mother gave a deep sigh. "It's a delicate matter." She eyed Ileana. "Mother, Ileana is our chief medical officer and third in command. If something is delicate, she needs to know," I demanded. "I didn't mean to imply. It's only—" Hallie was unable to find the words. "It's girls," Jotham flatly stated. "He's having a problem with girls. Eglin has just discovered the opposite sex. There was an incident. One of the young ladies had taken an interest in Eglin. One thing led to another, and she was accidentally electrocuted while they were intimate. She's fine, but now the rest of the girls are giving him a wide berth. His Varuni side has always been difficult for others to accept. Now he's being shunned for his Pranya side as well. He needs to get away for a while, Luke. Hallie was obviously pained by their adopted son's troubles. I closed my eyes and pressed the tips of my fingers to the bridge of my nose. This was not a good start to our mission. A damaged high command, a wanted flight team, and now an adolescent engineer with girl troubles. Mother, the Pollux is not a home for wayward boys. I need a reliable crew. I don't know. It sounds like he fits right in, if you ask me, Ileana said. Kai began to chuckle for the first time since waking. Eglin is a fine engineer. His prana abilities make him a natural with machinery, and he's the only one I can have through a portal to Atlana in time. Jotham's decision had clearly been made. I'll take him on a trial basis. I still need one more. Were you able to get Nadai? No. She's decided to remain in retirement. Her former apprentice, Zax, is considering the position. I'll keep looking, but transmissions between camps run slow. I may not be able to get someone to you until you reach Varuni space. Have you talked to Taj and Rake? One of the brothers might be eager to escape the Valkyrie nest, Jotham suggested with a grin. Not yet, I replied. I'd rather avoid stripping the astrape of too many crew. Ileana barked a laugh. That ship is bursting with crew. Trust me, Tolaire would jump at a vacation from Saraswa. I suppressed a grin. Taj and Tolaire's grand aunt, Saraswa, was a feisty 1,000-year-old Valkyrie with a penchant for mischief. She had once sent me and Kai halfway across the common to rescue an Andrani siren. When we brought the woman back to Saraswa, she cackled in the siren's face, while gloating she had broken the other woman's common scent record for the 12th consecutive time. The common scent was a well-known challenge between rivals to see who could bed all 10 accessible species. The Prithvi, Mary, and Vata species were not included. The Valkyrie then demanded we return the siren to her home. We stopped taking missions from the Lona Astrape after that incident. Still, I'd like to leave them as a last resort. Let's see if we can secure Zax first, I said. That's only 4 of us out to Kabari and 7 for the mission. Do you want to run that tight? Kai asked. You designed the Pollux well, Kai. For this mission, we could fly with only the 2 of us. We have a new scent of ident chips and switcher if we run into trouble, which we won't. This is a simple cargo pickup and then exploration mission. Nothing more. I was nervous Kai would protest my decision further, but he nodded in agreement. Jotham clapped his hands in excitement and threw an arm around his wife. Perfect. We'll have Eglin meet you in Atlana tomorrow. Good hunting, boys. And Ileana, Hallie quickly added before their transmission ended. I turned back to Kai and Ileana. Are we all in agreement? A skeleton crew? A long mission planet hunting? Time to heal and become a team? I'm in, Ileana said. Kai paused for a long moment, then finally nodded. Agreed. I looked at Didi. Do you agree, little Dee? Yes, sir, she enthusiastically responded, eager to finally be included in the discussion. Good. You will fetch my tools and put them all back where they belong. If you're going to be a part of this crew, then from now on, you're to stay out of the drives and leave my tools alone. And no stealing from the crew. Do you understand? Didi narrowed her little black eyes, then gave a tiny nod. Agreed. This had to be the worst idea ever proposed. Closing the display, I sat back in my chair and pinched the bridge of my nose. Less than a day after announcing our plan to return to the Common and hunt for a new home for the Hada, and I was already receiving distressing news. The daily report from Atlana described an unusual amount of Synergist activity surrounding the station. Despite our flight crew's recent trouble with the company, Synergist was a well-respected entity in the Common, providing much-needed jobs and resources for the poor and rich alike. The overcrowded Hada camps were beginning to find a measure of relief as entire populations found new opportunities within the company's constantly expanding endeavors. Normally, I wouldn't worry over the comings and goings of the seemingly innocuous corporation, but my latest intel indicated Kerr had earned a position high among the Synergist ranks. Over a week ago, my spy spotted the former mercenary on the space station of Synergist 49, wearing an escort officer's uniform and leading a small team of Raka, which suspiciously resembled a mercenary strike squad. Any organization that employed the man who had ruthlessly hunted us for centuries, who was responsible for the death of our sister and thousands of innocent others, a man who heralded the massacre of Vahara as a victory. Well, Synergist just became our primary concern. Now I just needed to keep this information out of Kai's hands. If he knew we were about to walk onto a space station where Kerr might be located, I would lose my brother. Kai would run headlong into a fight he could never win. I couldn't let that happen. It was a bit of fortune that I had the foresight to hire a spy outside of our standard network and keep the reports off the Pollux databases. When Kai discovered the deception, I would never hear the end of it. All I needed to do was keep the secret for 2 weeks. After that point, we would be beyond the Common Core system and Kai would be stuck on the Pollux, safe and alive. I opened my display and launched the communications dashboard. After a moment of pause, I activated the link that hadn't been used in nearly 30 years and waited. Several minutes later, the link finally opened and a familiar face appeared on my display. I hadn't been prepared for the sentimentality upon seeing my former crewmate. After Vahara, I convinced Patron to assume management of the club Kai and I owned on Atlana. The engineer had not been keen on the idea at first, but accepted out of loyalty. The position also gave him a key role in surveillance of the comings and goings in the Common. While Patron sent regular status reports on the club, Jotham and Haley had been his primary contacts. His long blonde hair was tied at the back of his neck, highlighting the same rough and weathered face I remembered. Even the long, jagged scar running from scalp to jaw along the left side of his face was just as it had been decades ago. He could have had it erased, but the cranky old keddy insisted it gave his face character. Patron wedged a thick cigar into the side of his mouth where it dangled from clenched, yellowed teeth and issued a knowing half-smile. "Jotham already briefed me on your arrival tomorrow," he said. "So, this transmission must mean you have a favor to ask. You look terrible, by the way." That was Patron, honest to a fault. The man wouldn't know polite courtesy if it held him down and branded him on the forehead. He would probably label the brand a battle scar and regale the club customers with a tale of heroic rebellion in his ongoing battle against social conformities. "I need your help with Kai," I said, ignoring his jibe at my appearance and getting straight to the point. "He's on a suicide mission to revenge Vahara and destroy Kerr. I need you to keep him secure inside Geminis tomorrow." Patron sat back in his chair and rubbed a calloused finger down his scar. "That doesn't sound like the Kai I used to know." "He's not the Kai you used to know," I sighed. "He's not ready for this fight. If my intel is accurate, there's a chance Kerr could be on Atlana. I need Kai to stay as far away from him as possible." "If you're thinking Kerr is now with Synergist, then he's not on Atlana. Not yet, anyway." Patron curled his lip in a sneer. It was rumored that the demon who ran Atlana had a contentious relationship with Synergist. The corporation wanted access to the most traveled space station in the Common, and the greedy demon wanted to keep the profits exclusively to himself. "The demon hasn't allowed Synergist to step foot on his station," Patron continued. "There are half a dozen escort ships circling, but so far none have been granted permission to dock. My spies are hearing rumors the Rock are in talks with one of the ships, but I doubt that disobey the demon. They can't afford to be exiled from Atlana. We both know if Kerr wants on that station, he will find a way. Just keep him out of Geminis and keep Kai inside." The man gave me a flat look. "We both know that if your brother wants out of Geminis, he will find a way. The two of you built this club. Kai knows this place better than I do. Not to mention the blasted Raka can teleport. How do you expect me to keep him contained?" It was a damn good question. I didn't want to cuff Kai with a teleport inhibitor, nor did I wish to shove him in a holding cell. Denying him the visit to Atlana would only rouse suspicion. Our only option was distraction. "Women," I said, a touch of disgust boiling in my gut. "He won't be able to resist a live feed. He's consuming more blood than normal since waking, but nothing fresh. Make sure whomever you bring in can withstand the drain, and no matry. He'll kill any witch you put in front of him right now." I'm running a respectable club, Lucien, not a brothel, Patron growled. You're running my respectable club. Use one of the private rooms on the second sub-level, I growled back, adding a bit of dominance to the tone. And keep a guard in the room. The last thing we need is for him to accidentally kill someone. Yes, sir. Patron immediately backed down. I'll make the arrangements. I received your supply list. We're clearing out the storage room next to the portal now. Your guest is expected to arrive several hours before you. I'll make sure he's well cared for until you get here. Do you require women for him as well? Patron asked with a smirk. No, I rolled my eyes. Thank you for the preparations, but keep the kid in the private quarters alone. Kid? The old man furrowed his brow in consternation. I wouldn't be surprised if he still considered the Pollux engines his to protect. Once an engineer, always an engineer. He's a 28-year-old Varuni Hada. This will be his first assignment. Patron's face dropped, the cigar nearly falling from his lips. You're replacing me with a fish child? The man nearly shouted his objection. A child, Lucien? You're giving my engines to a boy who's barely out of the water and probably hasn't even touched a woman yet. How is he supposed to know how to run my ship? Those engines are temperamental girls. If the man only knew how wrong and right he was. Patron may be tactless, but he usually only resorted to derogatory comments when he was truly flustered. The amphibious Varuni were as averse to being called fish as the Matri were to being called witches. Unfortunately, I had no real defense to his objections, save one. He's part Pranya, I said by way of explanation. My parents have essentially adopted him. It was widely known the Pranya were excellent with machinery and technology. For those captains who could tolerate the risk of having their crew potentially possessed by the energy beings, having a Pranya engineer was usually a boon, or a death sentence depending on the whims and intentions of the Pranya. Oh, Patron said, visibly deflating in his chair. Well, it's best you get them young. Don't expect me to go easy on the boy just because he's Hallie's new charity case. I won't turn over my engines to just any lad. I would expect nothing less. Thank you, old friend. He harumphed, uncomfortable with the sentiment. I'll see you tomorrow. Cut your blasted hair, boy. With that final insult, the old man closed our transmission. I rolled my neck and let out a full breath, suddenly aware that I had been on edge for the entire conversation. If I couldn't manage a simple discussion with an old friend, how in the common was I going to make it through this mission? Subscribe to continue listening and discover what happens when Lucien, Kai, and Ileana arrive in the space station at Lana. If you liked what you heard, the Uncommon ebook can be purchased at all major retailers for only 99 cents. Thank you for listening.